Hello, and welcome to Yokai of the Day. So instead of pulling a tarot card or an oracle card in the morning to sort of dictate how my day is gonna go, I like to go to yokai.com and hit random. Now, I don't like to ascribe any sort of significant deep meaning to that because, yokai generally not pleasant. So I'm not gonna let that sort of be the theme of my day. But I do like to have a good story to kind of carry me through. So today we have Shinigami. Now, if you're familiar with anime, Shinigami has come up more than once. Most of us got introduced into the concept of Shinigami through Death Note, but I know that's also been in Naruto and Bleach and a couple of others. Now, Death Note would have you believe that Shinigami are gods that have these books and they write down the names of the living that they want to die so that their life can fuel the Shinigami's life, or something like that. But the mythology of it is different, as you would expect. Now, Shinigami translates into Shi, which means death, and Kame, which means god or spirit. So they're not really gods, they're probably closer to ghosts or Oni than actual deities, but they are still pretty powerful. So Tales of the Grim Reaper have been around for centuries, but it wasn't until about 2 or 3 centuries ago when the introduction of that kind of being entered into sort of Japanese mythology and folklore. With that came the Shinigami. Shinigami have many different forms. There's no real consistent sort of telling of what they look like. I think most often they're described as corpse-like, very gray and spooky and very, not living person. But in illustrations, they can have multiple limbs, bright red. There are different variations of them. And so the stories change too. There are the occasional stories of Shinigami being cool, Grim Reaper-like. There are some stories of Shinigami being helpful. Like if somebody is really not wanting to exist on this planet anymore, the Shinigami would come and dissuade them from doing that. No, you have so much to live for, let's work this out. But most of the time, Shinigami ain't so nice. Most stories, and from what I can tell and from what I've read about them, they tend to appear and congregate around very bad situations. Grisly murders, people taking themselves out, as it were. And they linger at the scenes of crimes or around the bodies of those deceased from these terrible situations, waiting for somebody in the proximity that has even a hint of a similar kind of intention, and they latch onto them. Typically, Shinigami are creatures of possession. So if a bad situation happened with, really intense body count or really gruesome situation, the Shinigami would linger there, and as soon as somebody had even just the slightest hint of a rage or a vengeance in them, they would possess them or haunt them and coax them, coerce them into sort of perpetuating more of that behavior. I think they just like the chaos of death. They are particularly prone to getting people to unalive themselves. That is their big deal. That's what they love to do. If you get possessed by a Shinigami and you're not particularly of the murdery or vengeful sort, it is going to make you obsess over every terrible thing that you've done, everything that has gone wrong in your life until you just don't want to exist anymore. And they are vicious and unrelenting. The principle behind a lot of that is the theory that evil begets evil, that the wicked dead latch on to the wicked living and perpetuate more of that. As a pagan and somebody who has delved into the dead, I have some theories, I have some thoughts, and they are kind of my own. I have not met a lot of people that share my theories on ghosts and how they work and why they work. And if you want to hear about that, I will elaborate on that further because mine is very particular. But Shinigami make a lot of sense to me in my belief and my practice. Quick sum up of my experiences, and I have a lot, is that bad situations infect a place, much like mold or bacteria. Right? And on the same token, good situations, good, loving, beautiful, happy homes, you can feel it, right? You feel good. But you walk into a home where there is some extreme rage or violence or a grisly murder, you're gonna feel that. It is palpable. It's like smokers in their houses. You can't get rid of that. It just stays in the walls. So Shinigami are kind of like that. They keep that energy going and they make it stronger and thicker, and it is so much easier to convince somebody who was already maybe wanting to not exist anymore, maybe even just a little bit, to go that next step. They're not nice. I mean, some of them are hot, but they're not nice. Now, it is said that a good way to make sure that you do not fall prey to a Shinigami is that when you come home, before you go to bed, you have a cup of tea and or a bowl of rice and you get good rest. I think it is just by being relaxed and taking yourself to a place of unbothered, the Shinigami don't really have a place to kind of get in at you. By being relaxed, you're less open to outside influences. Now, if one is possessed by a Shinigami, there's not much you can do except for to get an exorcism, which is, not easy. I bet it's a lot easier to get an exorcism in Japan from Japanese spirits than it is to get from a Catholic situation. They really don't like to dole those out. Anyway, Shinigami, death gods or death spirits. Have a beautiful day. Don't get haunted. Love your face.